You're putting that inside me? Eleanor Morrison's hands trembled as she stared at the carved wooden box her new husband was opening on their wedding night. At 6 feet 2 inches tall, she'd never been afraid of anything. Until this moment, when Samuel Pierce smiled and lifted something from that box, something so massive it made her gasp. He whispered, "This is the largest you'll ever see, Eleanor, and tonight it becomes part of you, whether you're ready or not." What was this cowboy hiding in that box? What could make a woman who'd survived poverty, abandonment, and 1,000 miles of uncertainty freeze in absolute terror? The answer would change everything Eleanor believed about herself. Forever. But to understand this moment, we need to go back to where Eleanor's journey truly began. Welcome back to another story that will touch your heart and challenge everything you think you know about strength, beauty, and second chances. Today's story takes us to the rugged territories of Wyoming in 1887, where a desperate woman and a heartbroken rancher are about to discover that sometimes the biggest blessings come in the strongest packages. Before we dive in, do me a favor. Drop a comment right now telling us where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Are you in California at midnight, London at breakfast time, Sydney in the afternoon? We love hearing from you. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we bring you stories like this every single week. Stories that remind us what really matters in life. Now, let's begin. Eleanor Morrison had been different since the day she turned 14. That was the summer she shot past every boy in Philadelphia like a weed nobody wanted in their garden. By 15, she was 5 feet 10. By 17, she'd reached 6 feet. And by 19, when her father died and left her alone with nothing but debts and a stepmother who looked at her like a mistake that couldn't be undone. Eleanor stood at 6 feet 2 inches of muscle and curves that made society women whisper unnatural behind their embroidered fans. Her father used to say she was built for surviving, not for drawing rooms. He'd meant it as a compliment in his own way. Then he died of pneumonia during an unusually cold winter, and everything changed. Eleanor's stepmother, a petite woman named Constance who'd married Eleanor's father for his modest inheritance, wasted no time. 3 months after the funeral, Constance sold everything. The furniture, the dishes, her father's books, even Eleanor's mother's wedding ring. Eleanor came home one evening from her job scrubbing floors at a boarding house to find Constance sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and a cold expression. "I'm leaving for Boston next week," Constance said without preamble. "I've sold the house. You'll need to find your own arrangements." Eleanor felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "But where am I supposed to go?" Constance's smile was thin and sharp. "That's hardly my concern, dear. You're 19, old enough to make your own way. Though I can't imagine any man wanting a wife who towers over him like a lighthouse." The words hit Eleanor like physical blows, but she'd learned long ago not to show pain in front of people who enjoyed causing it. "I see," Eleanor said quietly. "Thank you for your honesty." She packed her belongings that night. Everything she owned fit into one battered trunk her father had brought from Ireland 40 years ago. And as she closed the lid on her entire childhood, Eleanor made herself a promise. She would survive this, just like she'd survived every cruel comment, every pitying look, every door that closed in her face because she didn't fit through it properly. She would survive because she was built for it, The boarding house where Eleanor worked was run by a woman named Mrs. Florence Ashworth, a widow with kind eyes and a practical nature who'd given Eleanor a job when no one else would. It was Mrs. Ashworth who showed Eleanor the advertisement 3 weeks after Constance left town. "I don't normally suggest such things," Mrs. Ashworth said, sliding the newspaper across the kitchen table. "But Eleanor, you're running out of options. And this one, well, read it for yourself." Eleanor's reading skills were basic at best. Her father had taught her letters before he died, but formal education had been impossible once she started growing. Schools didn't know what to do with a girl who couldn't fit at a normal desk. But she could make out enough of the advertisement to understand. Seeking a wife of strong character and stronger hands. Must be willing to relocate to Wyoming territory. Ranch life requires fortitude, not delicacy. No frail women need apply. Contact Samuel Pierce, Sweetwater, Wyoming. Eleanor read it 3 times, her heart pounding harder with each pass. "No frail women need apply," she whispered. Mrs. Ashworth nodded. "I took the liberty of writing to Mr. Pierce on your behalf. I hope you don't mind. I told him about you, about your strength, your character, your stature." Eleanor's throat closed. "You told him I'm a giant. I told him you're a survivor," Mrs. Ashworth corrected gently, "and he wrote back yesterday." She produced a letter from her apron pocket. The paper was thick, expensive. The handwriting was neat and strong. Eleanor's hands shook as Mrs. Ashworth read it aloud. "Dear Mrs. Ashworth, thank you for your letter regarding Miss Eleanor Morrison. Her qualities sound exactly suited to life in Wyoming territory. I would be honored if she would consider becoming my wife. I am a rancher of modest means, seeking a partner who can stand beside me in building a life that will not be easy, but will be honest and true. I value strength over delicacy, courage over refinement, and character over all else. If Miss Morrison is willing, I will send funds for her passage immediately. I ask only that she comes with an open heart and a willingness to work hard. Yours in hope, Samuel Pierce." Eleanor couldn't breathe. Someone valued strength over delicacy. Someone was specifically looking for what she'd been told her entire life was wrong with her. "It could be a trick," she whispered. "Men don't. They don't want women like me." Mrs. Ashworth took Eleanor's large hand in both of hers. "Some men are fools. But this letter doesn't sound like it was written by a fool. It sounds like it was written by a man who knows exactly what he needs." The train tickets arrived 1 week later. Along with them came 4 months of correspondence, with Mrs. Ashworth reading Samuel's letters aloud and writing down Eleanor's responses. Samuel wrote about Wyoming sunsets that painted the mountains gold, about cattle drives and summer storms, about building something that would last beyond one lifetime. He wrote beautiful letters that made Eleanor cry in the privacy of her tiny room. He never once asked what she looked like, never asked her measurements or requested a photograph. He just asked about her dreams, her fears, what kind of life she wanted to build. And slowly, carefully, Eleanor let herself hope. The train ride from Philadelphia to Sweetwater, Wyoming took 4 days. 4 days of watching the landscape change from crowded cities to endless prairie. 4 days of rehearsing what she'd say when she met Samuel Pierce. 4 days of imagining the moment he'd see her and realize he'd made a terrible mistake. Because Eleanor knew how this worked. She'd seen it before. Men wrote beautiful letters. They talked about valuing character and strength. But when they actually saw her, really saw her, standing there in all her 6'2" reality, Something changed in their eyes. Disappointment. Disgust. The desperate search for a polite way to escape. So when the train pulled into Sweetwater on a bright Tuesday morning in September, Eleanor was prepared for rejection. What she wasn't prepared for was Samuel Pierce himself. The platform was crowded with merchants and ranchers collecting supplies. Every single person stopped what they were doing when Eleanor stepped off that train. She was used to the stares, had been since she was 14, and shot past normal like it was standing still. She scanned the crowd, looking for... she didn't even know what. Samuel had never described himself in his letters. She'd imagined someone tall, broad-shouldered, someone whose size would match hers. And then she saw him. Short, maybe 5'7" on a good day, weathered face with lines around his eyes that came from squinting at the sun. Calloused hands clutching a hat like he was nervous. Brown hair shot through with gray, even though he couldn't have been more than 35. Their eyes met across the platform, and Eleanor watched it happen in real time. The realization crossing Samuel's face that his mail-order bride was a giant. She braced herself for the disgust, for the stammered apology, for the excuse about how there'd been a terrible misunderstanding. But Samuel Pierce just smiled, slow and warm, like honey dripping off a spoon. Then he walked toward her. Didn't hesitate, didn't falter, just walked straight to her through a crowd of staring people like she was exactly what he'd been hoping for. "Miss Morrison," he said, and his voice was deep and steady and kind. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." Eleanor couldn't breathe. Beautiful. When had anyone ever called her beautiful? She looked down at this small rancher with kind eyes and waited for the punchline, for the cruel joke, for the laughter that always came. But Samuel just kept smiling, and then he did something that broke her completely. He reached up, had to stretch to do it, and gently took her hand. "Welcome home, Eleanor," he whispered, and she realized he meant it. This stranger who barely reached her chin had just called her beautiful and welcomed her home. Eleanor didn't know whether to cry or run, so she just stood there, frozen, while Samuel loaded her trunk onto a wagon that looked expensive. Too expensive for a modest rancher. The ride to Samuel's property should have warned her. They passed acres and acres of grazing cattle, through gates marked with an elaborate SP brand, past ranch hands who tipped their hats and called Samuel boss like he owned half the territory. But Eleanor had grown up poor, had spent the last 3 years scrubbing floors for 75 cents a week. She didn't recognize wealth when it spread across the Wyoming landscape like a kingdom. Not until they crested that final hill. And Eleanor saw the house. Not a cabin, not a modest homestead. A 2-story ranch house with a wraparound porch. Stables that looked bigger than any building she'd ever lived in. Windows that caught the setting sun like they were made of actual gold. "This?" Eleanor whispered, and her voice sounded small for the first time in her life. "This is yours?" Samuel's smile faltered, just for a second. Then he looked up at her with something fierce in his eyes. "Ours," he corrected quietly. "As of this morning, it's ours, Eleanor." And that's when she knew. Samuel Pierce wasn't a modest rancher. He was wealthy, important, powerful. And for some reason she couldn't understand, he'd chosen her. A giant woman with nothing to her name but a battered trunk and 4 months of letters written by a boarding house owner, because Eleanor could barely read. Eleanor's hands started shaking, because she'd learned long ago that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. And men like Samuel Pierce didn't marry women like her unless they wanted something. The question was, what? The wedding happened so fast Eleanor barely remembered it. 1 minute she was standing in Samuel's enormous front parlor, trying not to touch anything expensive. The next, she was in front of a preacher with Samuel's hand wrapped around hers, his fingers barely making it halfway around her palm, promising to love and honor until death. The only witnesses were 2 ranch hands and a woman named Victoria Bennett. Victoria was everything Eleanor wasn't. Petite, delicate, dressed in sapphire silk that probably cost more than Eleanor had earned in her entire life. She had porcelain skin and golden hair arranged in perfect curls that must have taken hours. And when the preacher pronounced Samuel and Eleanor husband and wife, Victoria's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. After the ceremony, Victoria glided over with that same cutting smile. "I'll pray for you, Samuel," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Taking in a woman like that. Well, charity is a Christian virtue, I suppose." The words hit Eleanor like a fist to the stomach. Of course, that's what this was. Charity. Samuel Pierce pitied the giant Philadelphia woman with nowhere else to go, so he'd married her out of Christian duty. Probably planned to stick her in the kitchen or put her to work in the fields where someone her size belonged. But if Eleanor expected distance after the ceremony, she was wrong. Samuel took her hand again, so gentle like she was made of something precious instead of lumber and nails, and led her through the house. Every room was bigger than the last. Polished wood floors, furniture that looked like it came from catalogs, a kitchen with a cast iron stove so new it still gleamed. "This was my mother's house," Samuel said softly as they climbed the stairs. "She designed every inch of it, built it to last." He paused outside a closed door, and something in his face changed. Went distant and full of old pain. "This was going to be the nursery," he whispered. "My wife, Rebecca. She died 3 years ago. Her and our baby. Childbirth took them both." Eleanor's throat closed. She understood then. They were both broken things trying to piece themselves back together. Samuel had lost a wife and child. Eleanor had lost everything else. 2 damaged souls who'd found each other across 1,000 miles of loneliness and desperation. "I'm sorry," Eleanor whispered, and meant it with everything in her. Samuel looked up at her, and something passed between them. Recognition. Understanding, like 2 people who'd been walking through darkness finally seeing another light. "Don't be sorry," Samuel said, and his voice was rough. "You're here now, Eleanor. That's all that matters." Samuel showed her to the bedroom last. Their bedroom. It was huge, with windows overlooking the ranch and a bed so large Eleanor wondered if it had been built special. "I'll give you time to freshen up," Samuel said, backing toward the door. "Take all the time you need. I'll be downstairs." Then he was gone, and Eleanor was alone in a bedroom that cost more than her entire childhood. She stood there in her wedding dress, the only decent thing she owned, borrowed from Mrs. Ashworth, and tried to breathe through the panic rising in her chest. Because she knew what came next, and every story she'd heard made it sound terrifying and painful and inevitable. How could someone as small as Samuel even manage with someone like her? Would he be disgusted? Would he realize he'd made a terrible mistake? Her hands shook so badly she couldn't work the buttons on the back of her dress. Couldn't reach them. Just stood there, trapped in borrowed silk while the sun set outside and shadows filled the room. That's when Samuel knocked. Soft, polite, like he was asking permission to enter his own bedroom. "Eleanor, may I come in?" His voice was so gentle it made her want to cry. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe, but she managed a whispered yes that sounded like surrender. The door opened, and Samuel stepped inside carrying a wooden box, carved. Beautiful. Old. He set it carefully on the bed and turned to face her. The tenderness in his eyes made Eleanor want to run. "I need to show you something," Samuel said quietly, and he was nervous. Actually, nervous. His hands trembled as he touched the box. Before anything else happens between us, I need you to understand what you mean to me." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd been through this before. Different men, different cities, but always the same moment when they revealed what they really wanted. Control, submission. Proof that even a giant woman could be made to feel small and powerless. She braced herself as Samuel opened the box with shaking hands. And then she froze, because inside wasn't what she expected, not even close. A sapphire ring sat nestled in black velvet. The stone so enormous it caught the lamplight like a trapped piece of the Wyoming sky. Next to it were folded papers with official seals and legal stamps that looked important. Samuel lifted the ring first, and his hands were still trembling. "This was my grandmother's," he said, and his voice cracked. "Then my mother's. Then Rebecca's, the woman I loved before you." Eleanor took a step back, then another. Tears burned her eyes and throat because of course this was about his deceased wife. He wanted Eleanor to wear a departed woman's ring, to play house and pretend to be something she could never be. Delicate, petite, worthy of a Pierce family heirloom. "I can't," Eleanor whispered, and the words came out broken. "I can't be her, Samuel. I can't be small and pretty and everything you lost. I can't shrink myself down to fit into a woman's jewelry who's no longer here." Her voice was rising now, all the fear and shame spilling out like poison. "I'm not delicate, I'm not refined. I'm just a giant from Philadelphia who can barely read. And I don't know why you married me, but I can't be what you want because I'm too much. I've always been too much. And I'm sorry, but I can't." "Stop." Samuel's voice cracked through the room like thunder. "Just stop, Eleanor." Samuel crossed the room in 3 strides. Even standing, he had to look up to meet her eyes. His face was fierce, angry, almost, but not at her. At something else entirely. "You think I want you to be small?" His voice shook. "You think I brought you all the way to Wyoming so you could shrink yourself down and disappear?" He grabbed her hands, both of them. His fingers disappeared in her palms, but he held on like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting. "Eleanor, I chose you because you're not small. Because every letter you wrote, every single one, I could feel your strength bleeding through the words, even though someone else was writing them down for you." Eleanor's breath caught. He knew. He knew she couldn't read well, and he didn't care. "I could feel your courage," Samuel continued, and now he was the one with tears in his eyes. "Your refusal to apologize for taking up space in this world. Your determination to survive even when everyone told you that you didn't fit. And I thought, God, I prayed, that maybe you were strong enough for what I needed." "But Victoria said," Eleanor started. Samuel's laugh was bitter. "Victoria Bennett is angry because I wouldn't marry her younger sister. Because I told her family 3 years ago that I'd never marry a delicate woman again." that I'd never watch another wife perish because she wasn't strong enough to survive Wyoming winters and difficult births and the kind of life we live out here. The room spun. Eleanor couldn't process what she was hearing. "What are you saying?" Samuel's smile was watery and fierce and full of something that looked like desperation. "I'm saying Rebecca was 5 feet tall and weighed 90 pounds. Beautiful, delicate. Everyone said we were the perfect couple because she was small enough to make me look tall." His voice broke completely, and it ended her, ended our baby. She went into labor too early, and she was so small, so fragile, and there was nothing anyone could do. I watched her bleed in our bed while our son passed in her arms, and I swore I'd never marry another woman who couldn't survive this life. He lifted the ring, and the sapphire blazed in the lamplight like blue fire. "This stone is the largest in Wyoming territory. It belonged to my grandmother, Catherine, who was 6 feet tall and could outride any man in 3 counties. My mother, Elizabeth, was 5'11" and ran this ranch for 20 years after my father passed. She broke horses and delivered calves, and once fought off a wolf with nothing but a shovel." Samuel's hands were shaking so hard the ring trembled. "These women survived, Eleanor. They were strong. And when I read your first letter, when I felt your strength coming through those words, I knew you were like them, built for surviving, not for breaking." Eleanor couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her whole life, people had treated her size like a curse, like something shameful that needed to be hidden or apologized for. But Samuel was looking at her like she was exactly what he'd been searching for. "I don't understand," she whispered. Samuel set the ring down gently and lifted the papers. His hands were steadier now, determined. "Then let me make it clear." He thrust the papers toward her, and Eleanor saw her name written in official script, saw the legal stamps and signatures that made it real. "This is the deed to half this ranch. I had my lawyer draw it up the morning after I got your first letter. Your name is already on it, Eleanor Morrison Pierce. Whether you wear that ring or not, whether you ever share my bed or not, half of everything I own is legally yours. The house, the land, the cattle, the bank accounts, everything." Eleanor stared at the papers like they might disappear if she blinked. "You're giving me half of everything," she whispered. "But why? I'm nobody. I'm just a desperate woman who answered an advertisement because I had nowhere else to go. I can't read properly. I can't do fancy needlework or play piano or any of the things wealthy wives are supposed to." "I don't need fancy," Samuel interrupted, and now his voice was fierce again. "I need real. I need a partner who can stand beside me, not behind me. I need someone who won't break when life gets hard. I need a woman strong enough to birth healthy children and run this ranch when I'm gone and survive Wyoming winters that end people who aren't tough enough." He picked up the ring again, and this time when he looked at her, Eleanor saw everything. All his fear, all his hope, all the desperate loneliness of a man who'd watched his first wife pass and spent 3 years terrified it would happen again. "You're putting that inside me?" Eleanor whispered, pointing at the papers with a trembling hand. "You're giving me half your ranch. You're making me your legal partner, but I just arrived. You barely know me. What if I'm not what you think? What if I fail or disappoint you? Or, then we'll figure it out together," Samuel said simply. He stepped closer. So close Eleanor could smell the soap he'd used and see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, Eleanor. I'm asking you to be strong, and you've been strong your whole life. I can see it in the way you stand, the way you look people in the eye even when they're cruel, the way you got on that train and traveled 1,000 miles to marry a stranger because you refused to give up. He held up the ring and the deed together. This is the largest thing you'll ever see. Not the sapphire, not the ranch, but the truth that you are worth everything I have to give. That your strength isn't a curse. It's exactly what I need. What we need to build a life that lasts. Eleanor's knees gave out, just completely stopped working. She dropped to the floor, and for the first time in her adult life, she was eye level with a man. Samuel knelt with her, still holding that ring and those papers like they were sacred. I can't be her, Eleanor sobbed, and all the years of shame and rejection came pouring out. I can't be Rebecca or your mother or your grandmother. I'm just me. Just Eleanor, who's too tall and too strong and too much for everyone who's ever known me. Samuel cupped her face in his calloused hands. You're not too much, he whispered fiercely. You're exactly enough. And I don't want you to be anyone but yourself. Then he did something that shattered every defense Eleanor had ever built. He pressed his forehead to hers. This small rancher and his giant bride kneeling together on an expensive bedroom floor. And he started to cry. I'm so tired of being alone, he whispered. So tired of being afraid that everyone I love will break. But when I saw you on that platform, taking up space and refusing to apologize for it, I felt hope for the first time in 3 years. His voice cracked. Please, Eleanor, please let me put this inside you. This truth, this partnership, this future we could build together. Let me give you half of everything I have and prove that you're worth it all. Eleanor kissed him. She didn't plan it, didn't think about it. Just grabbed Samuel's face in her massive hands and kissed him with every ounce of loneliness and hope and desperate gratitude that had been building inside her for 22 years. He kissed her back like she was air, and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing, and Samuel's hat had fallen off somewhere, and Eleanor's hair was coming loose from its pins. So, Samuel said, his voice shaky but his smile growing, about this ring. He slid the sapphire onto Eleanor's finger, and she gasped because it fit perfectly. Not too tight, not too loose. Like it had been waiting her whole life to find her hand. The stone blazed blue fire in the lamplight, larger than anything Eleanor had ever worn, larger than she'd ever imagined wearing. This really is the largest I'll ever see, isn't it? She whispered, staring at the ring, then at the deed that made her a landowner, then at the man who'd given her both without asking for anything in return. Samuel's smile could have lit the whole Wyoming sky. Darling, he said softly, we're just getting started. 8 months later, Eleanor Pierce stood in the ranch yard, 7 months pregnant with a belly so large she could barely see her own feet, directing ranch hands with a voice that carried clear across the fields. No, not that pen. The calves need more space. Move them to the east pasture where the grass is better. The men jumped to obey. They'd learned quickly that Mrs. Pierce might be soft-spoken with her husband, but she ran the ranch operations like a general commanding troops. Samuel watched from the porch, grinning like a fool. He did that a lot these days. Just stood there watching his wife work with this expression of pure contentment on his face. Victoria Bennett had stopped visiting after Eleanor won the county horse race at 5 months pregnant. Just climbed on Samuel's biggest stallion and left every competitor in the dust while the whole town watched in shocked silence. Some women were just born to be queens. And Eleanor was definitely a queen. She'd learned to read in 4 months, was already keeping the ranch books better than Samuel ever had, could birth a calf, break a horse, and bake bread that made the ranch hands weep with gratitude. But more than any of that, she was happy. Samuel could see it in the way she moved, the way she laughed, the way she rested her hand on her enormous belly and talked to their unborn child about the ranch like she was introducing them to their kingdom. "What are you smiling about?" Eleanor called from the yard, and Samuel realized he'd been standing there grinning like an idiot again. "Just thinking about how smart I am," he called back. Eleanor laughed and the sound rolled across the ranch like music. "You mean how lucky you are?" Samuel shook his head and walked down the porch steps to where his wife stood, surrounded by ranch hands and cattle and the empire they were building together. He had to look up to meet her eyes, would always have to look up. And he'd never been more grateful for anything in his life. "Not lucky," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Smart. I was smart enough to know that the largest thing I'd ever see wasn't a ranch or a fortune or a sapphire ring." He placed his hand over hers on her swollen belly. "It was you, Eleanor, your strength, your courage, your refusal to be anything less than exactly who you are." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "The largest I'll ever see," she whispered. And they both knew she wasn't talking about the ring anymore. She was talking about the life they'd built, the future they were creating, the truth that she was exactly enough. Samuel kissed her right there in the ranch yard, with all the hands watching. And nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. They just smiled and went back to work. Because everyone on the Pierce Ranch knew the truth. Sometimes the biggest blessings come in the strongest packages. And Eleanor Pierce was the biggest blessing Wyoming had ever seen. If this story touched your heart, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now telling us what time it is, where you are, and where in the world you're watching from. Are you in New York at midnight, Paris at dawn, Tokyo in the afternoon? Let us know. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another emotionally powerful story like this one. Because we've got more coming, and trust us, you don't want to miss what happens next. Remember, you are not too much. You are exactly enough. And somewhere out there, someone is looking for exactly what makes you different. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.